Day two of Career Exploration Week, STEM Day. If you guys could all just kind of move forward so we don't have empty space looking a little weird. So I please request you guys to move forward. We have chai and samosas in the back. If you guys want to help yourselves, feel free to do that. Before we get started, I'd like to thank all of our speakers for taking the time out of their busy schedule for being here today with us. We also have a few upcoming events for the Career Exploration Week. Tomorrow we will have Social Science and Law Day. Same time, registration check-in around 6:30. Event probably starts around 7 o'clock. We also have Business and Finance Day on Thursday, and that will be the last day of the Career Exploration Week. A few upcoming events that youth is hosting. We have a series starting with Imam Fuad for role models in the Quran. This will be starting on Friday. We also have a kickboxing class starting. Currently, it's only for the brothers. We are working on starting a sisters kickboxing class soon, inshallah. So just to introduce our speakers for today, they'll do most of their introductions. We have Brother Zahir Mohiuddin, who is currently the co-founder of Levels.fyi. We have Brother Junaid Shabir, who is the Senior Director and Principal Investigator for Roche. We have Brother Mushtaq Hussain Kazi. He is currently the Global Head of Roche Informatics Strategy and Digital Innovation. He's also the chairperson of the Alliance of Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare, which is an alliance of 50 plus healthcare companies focusing on AI. We have Brother Asim Razak here with us today. He is currently the co-founder and CEO of YodaScale, a cloud cost planning, monitoring, and optimizing platform that is trusted by companies like Zoom, Hulu, and Aflac, among others. We also have Brother Zahid Sheikh with us today. He is currently the co-founder and head of product at Sardine, a fraud compliance and payment platform used by many companies like the National Bank of Canada, Mattel, and Tops, to name a few. So please put a warm welcome together for all of our speakers. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. I'm usually used to going last because my name starts with Z, so feel a bit more on the spot today. But my name is Zahir Mohiuddin. I'm a co-founder of Levels.fyi. In terms of, I guess we're just doing background introduction, is that right? Okay. So yeah, my background is I graduated in computer science from UC Irvine in 2014. After that, I worked at LinkedIn for about 2 years as an engineer, and then I worked at Amazon Web Services, AWS, for about 3 years after that. And then I left to go full-time on my startup, Levels.fyi. So Levels.fyi is, we're a career platform. We help professionals build better careers. We help them compare their options, help them get career advice, and move up in their careers. And then we also help companies connect with professionals to hire, essentially. And then we also help companies benchmark compensation and with similar sort of HR matters. So yeah, that's kind of the high level of it. I started Levels.fyi with my co-founder. His name is Zohair, back in 2016, I believe. So between LinkedIn and Amazon. And so we've been working on it for about almost 6 years now. Yeah, that's. I'll keep it brief there.
I think Zakir asked to kind of talk about the journey and who the influences were, and sort of nothing's really linear in life. So there's a lot of non-linear things that happen. So I'll delve a little bit into that. I'm a first generation Pakistani American. So I was born and raised in Lahore. Context is important when you're talking about careers and choices and how do you end up where you do. And you know, my sort of foray into math and computer science and STEM, if you will, a lot of it was influenced by my father because he is a chartered accountant known as CPA here in the US, and math was just part and parcel of what we did. I remember his accountancy firm many years ago as a child, what they would make the intern accountants do as a test. They used to have these phone books, these directories, right, with a bunch of numbers. I know they probably don't exist anymore. and they knew the answer to this, and they would have dozens of pages. They would add it up and see if the answer matched, and if it did, they could go to the next round and all of that. So the point there is that there was a lot of ingrained math in the family, and that was some early influence. I also ended up having teachers that were very key in my journey. And I just want to say that it was their character and them as human beings, first and foremost. And the subject they taught was secondary in a way, right? Because you get attracted to people who are kind and who love to and care for you. And it just ended up that some of those teachers were in STEM and they were in math. But one memory that strikes me quite amazingly, even to this day, is one teacher which increased my love of physics. So this was in high school, and I remember his name was Khalid Iqbal. In the high school, he would bring things like a Van de Graaff generator for static electricity. You would touch it, your hair would go up. He would bring the engine of a car to teach electromagnetic theories and how the relay switch works. And so, those influences led to my love for STEM and my love for physics specifically. So when I was applying to colleges, my heart was set on physics and math. That's what I wanted to do. And we're talking about circa, I'm dating myself here, 96, 97, going into undergrad. But there was this field called computer science at the time that was really, really rising. And I happened to take a course, and that changed the course of what I wanted to do. And the reason was that I could not make physics do a lot of things. I could not make math do a lot of things, but I saw that I could make a program do a lot of different things. And I saw that practicality. So that's what I pursued. And my background in math was, and computer science was helpful in there. And then I was fortunate to be at a school that was a top 10 computer sciences program at University of Texas, Austin. And I came from a kind of relatively humble middle ground background, so didn't have a lot of money in my pocket. I, in fact, had to teach to earn enough money to buy the ticket to come to the US. And I think at UT, and Zaki had asked about like what were your challenges through college, and then what choices did you make beyond that. And candidly, one of the biggest challenges I had was some of the cultural pieces, right? Because I was coming from one culture and I was coming into another culture, which some of you might not relate to because you were born and raised there. Some of you were first generation immigrants might relate to it. So there were those pieces to it. And to this day, I remember when I initially landed and my first few days, because we didn't have McDonald's back there at the time, right? And I I wanted halal food, and I walk into a McDonald's and I'm looking at all the options and what can I have, and I saw a list of cheeseburgers. So I'm like, okay, that seems like a safe bet, right? So like I order a cheeseburger, go back, and I'm about to bite my teeth into it, and I'm like, this a meat patty in here. Like, what's going on? So I go up to the counter person, and I'm like, why is there meat in my cheeseburger? And she goes, because it's a cheeseburger. That was kind of the interaction. She pointed to the picture. So I think that's just to give you the context that you're trying to trade off a lot of things, right? You're acclimating to the culture. You're trying to go through this program. But I was very fortunate that people helped me out. I was able to get a job on campus. I was able to get in-state tuition, and I was able to also get some scholarships along the way. And I was telling some of the younger folks earlier that the reason why I got the scholarship was not necessarily because I was the smartest kid. It was because the process was complicated, and 95% of the people didn't even apply. So the very few people who did apply, they got it. So that is one of the themes, is that you have to be outside your comfort zone. You have to take the shots in life, right? You have to take sometimes the unbeaten path. You have to take the risk. You have to not go with the flow. You don't have to make necessarily the safe bet. So I think that formulated a lot of different things in terms of being an immigrant, being in school and college, having to pay through it, finding different ways to hustle to do that. The other key thing was really making sure that I have internships, right? Because that really sets you apart. And I mix it up because I wasn't sure if I wanted to work for a big company or a small company. So I worked at a couple of startups, I worked at large companies. But it was pretty clear in my mind and my personality that startups is sort of where I want to be because impact was very, very important. So fast forward to I graduated. I happened to graduate in a boom cycle. We all know there is boom and bust cycles. We're going through a bit of a bust cycle right now. If somebody doesn't agree, like we can talk, but we're definitely going through a downturn right now. Um, um, you might be a little different. So I think the important part was that despite that, so when I was graduating, software engineers were in extremely high demand. I mean, if you said Java, if you yelled programming, like somebody would offer you a job right then and there. So my challenge was a little bit of a reverse challenge for people who are looking for jobs right now, which is like, how do I find the right one? How do I tell the difference? And it's all about networking. I went with people I knew, I went with people who I trusted, but my single most important focus and goal was learning. I wanted to learn from smart people. I didn't care about title. I didn't care about whether I was going to be at a big name company and my resume looked amazing. I was just going after amazing people, and some of the people I met during my internship, during my college days, and through those references, I ended up at a startup. The other risk I took is back to risk taking. I'm not saying everybody should do it. As a student who was on visa and as somebody who was on an H-1 visa, the smart thing or the standard thing to do would have been to just go at a Microsoft or go at an Oracle, study there for uh, basically sit there for 5 years, get your green card, and that's it. So I took a risk, and then the dot-com bust happened, and the startup that I was at, I mean, it didn't make it. And it was a pretty kind of an interesting situation because you have to leave the country within 10 days if your company folds. But I had some amazing people around me, and I think you can't make it without amazing people around you. Just remember that, right? And these people had amazing hearts. They kept me on payroll just enough so I could land a job. And I think in the bus cycle which ensued, which is where we are right now, it was networking. It was really the people I knew. I knocked on different doors. I didn't take the standard path. And so I'll skip through some of the parts. Like I ended up at a startup that was one of the best application of computer science that I've seen. It was a bunch of operations research people. And it's like, what would somebody with a bachelor's degree do here? Like we're all PhDs, and I had to make the case. And even though I wasn't working on the core, I was close enough to the core. So you have to hustle. You have to show the determination, and they love the passion. They love the determination. So they gave me a shot. So that was the next shot, and went through a series of different startups. Moved up the ranks in engineering because I was the guy who was always looking at how things could be done better or differently. So I was the big mouth, and they eventually said, "Why don't you do it?" And that's what ended up happening. So I ended up taking on some more responsibility there. But I did have a foray into bigger company from my vantage point, which is PayPal, where I ended up in initially a very small group, which I call entrepreneurship within a large company. So they were building the third wave of PayPal, which is the developer platform, right? So PayPal has consumer, merchant, and developer was the third one. And they liked my startup experience. But doing entrepreneurship versus entrepreneurship is very different. So innovation within a large company versus innovation outside of the company is very different. And that led to an amazing experience because there was a lot of challenges. It was almost like on LinkedIn, I saw a meme one time where you have this sheep that is stuck in a tire and there's a rope connected and it's just going back and forth. It really runs and then it just goes into free fall and runs and goes into free fall. So that's what entrepreneurship felt a little bit at PayPal because they're like, yes, we're going to conquer the world, but you only have $10. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but that's sort of what it was. But it helped hone in my grit, my resilience, against all odds. We built the platform. We went against a lot of cultural norms, and then we built it to the point where billions of dollars were coming through the revenue chain. So I mean, I'm really proud to this day of my team to be able to do that. So I came up the ranks all the way to running platform engineering as a result, those opportunities. And I think one thing I wanted to mention there is that I try to make sure I wasn't worried about title, that I have to be at a certain level. I was always looking at interesting work and interesting challenges to solve. And I think that is what led to a lot of progress for me. Uh, to where, as a head of platform engineering, one of the problems I saw as cloud computing became more and more pervasive, right? AWS started in 2007, and a number of years later, cloud computing was in a lot of different arenas, was the cost of it. It's very expensive. It's hard to understand where the money is going. And it was becoming a problem for a lot of companies. And so I'd reached an inflection point in 2015, whether I stay in my cushy job and continue to accrue the RSUs and continue to make the money, or do I take the plunge and go start a company? And I chickened out a couple of times before doing it, but I finally took the plunge because I felt that the timing was right, my experience was very relevant, and that I could afford not to do it at that point in time. So we started the company, it's about 6+ years now. We do help a lot of companies, Zakir had an intro there where we help companies like Zoom, Hulu, Disney. I was talking to you about Flatiron, which is part of Roche, and others, effectively reduce their cloud computing footprint, reduce the bill. And with AI, LLM, I mean, the stuff is only going to get out of hand. The startup journey is a whole other talk. So I'm sure all of the founders will tell you that. So I will spare that. But I think the upshot there is that you don't have a linear path, have a growth mindset, and you earlier on in your career, for sure, you have to take certain risks. You can't just the playing field is getting leveled at this point globally, so you have to set yourselves apart. Thanks.
So before I start, I was just curious, like how many of you want to be a software engineer? If you want. Okay, so next thing is, I was just curious, like how many of you want to be a. Yeah. Hello, hello. Yeah, this is much better. My next question is like, how many of you want to be a product manager? Okay, one or two. Great. So the reason I asked this question was I started my journey as a software engineer. Eventually, I became a product manager. And finally, I'm now a co-founder of a company called as Sardine.ai. So eventually, I will give you advice if you got time after this on all these three areas. I'd like to emphasize what Junaid Bhai just said, which is uh, networking is very important in all your career. For example, in all the jobs that I've done, and I've done I've worked in tons of companies. So I will start with my background. So hi, I'm Zaid. I'm the co-founder of Sardine. I did my Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics from Sabu Siddiq, which is also Anjuman Islam. After that, I was doing my engineering in electronics engineering, and that time there was not too many job opportunities in electronics engineering. So I had to do a course in something called as CDAC or NCST in India, which was primarily tuned towards software. And that was the best decision I probably did in my life. At that time, I repented it because what they did was for 6 months, they taught me only one subject, which was something called as data structures. And at that time, I was really frustrated because I was thinking, like, why are they making me solve all this like equivalent of mathematical kind of problems? That time I did not realize is that when you're doing education, that is when you're learning math or something like that, you're actually learning the art of problem solving. This art of problem solving is in fact probably going to increase the neurons in your brain and is going to help you a lot eventually in your career. But at that point, I did not realize it. I was hoping that they would teach me something more important like Java, C++, etc. But they were teaching me primarily like how to solve equivalent of puzzles. Uh, then after that, I had all this chicken and egg problem, which many of you freshers have. That is, without experience, no one is going to give you a job, etc. So my internship at BARC, as well as, of course, this NCST did help me in getting my first job, which was with Hitachi. It's a Japanese company through a company called as Patni Computer System. Then I worked all over the US. After Patni, I worked for Chase, then in Delaware. That time I always joke that I used to see Biden every day. And at that time, I did not realize that this Biden guy will become a prime minister. So he used to always take an Amtrak from Wilmington, Delaware to Washington, D.C. And I used to just ignore him because he was a small senator of a small state. Then from there, I moved to like New York City, Tampa, Florida with Verizon, San Jose with PayPal, and then I worked for a UK-based company called as Revolut, Uber, and finally I created my company. The one thing that helped in my journey was because of all these various companies that I worked, I was able to build very good amount of connections. The connections is very important if you are going to start a B2B company. There is also a B2C company area also. I will come to that later. Now, my career advice would be if you're going to do a software engineering, make sure that you're very good in what I already emphasized, which is data structures, because that is the thing that they're going to ask you for the next 20 years, that, especially in Bay Area. If you want to be a product manager, the main thing that folks need is something called as domain knowledge. You need to be very good in your domain knowledge. Uh, and it's like hard to become a product manager in the beginning stage. You have to first become a software engineer, preferably, gain lots of domain knowledge, and then you should become the product manager. As a product manager, I personally thought it's easy to create a company. Without a product management background, it is not that easy. And when I've switched from software engineer to product manager, what I realized was that it is a complete career change. All my education no longer helped me. So I did all that electronics engineering, SST, etc. So now I had to go back to basics. So I had to take some courses from Harvard and Stanford. Luckily, there is lots of continuing education courses out there. So I was able to take it, and it helped me in becoming a decent product manager. I would not say great, but at least a decent product manager. Then I started this company, Sardine, which is a fraud and compliance platform. Now, just out of curiosity, do you know like what happens when you go in incognito window in the browser? Do you think the companies they know anything about you, or like is it really like they like you're all hidden if you use incognito window? So I can tell you that's not true. If even if you're going incognito window, there's a good chance they know everything about you. They know your name, they know your address, they know what is your wife's name, they know everything about you in most cases. Okay. A company like us, we are usually not with the intention of tracking people. We are more intention of preventing fraud. So sometimes it's important for us to know like who the customer is. Uh, and we also take data from darknet, which is where all the stolen data is usually kept. So we buy data from darknet, and that's how we are able to stop fraud if it's going to happen at companies like, let's say, Coinbase or PayPal, etc. So with that, I will stop. But if you guys have any questions, I will continue later.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. You know, I feel the careers are almost like I used to play cricket, and I think quite a few must be playing cricket. And I feel career is something similar to that. You get, you go to bat and you get a lot of balls thrown at you. As long as you don't get bowled, you can continue playing. And obviously, people will scream at you if you don't, hit the runs fast enough. It's like T20 or something like that. The reason I say that is like the bold in live sense is like doing drugs or something like really terrible, right? Like really terrible. But other than that, there is no bad choices out there in terms of careers. And you could go fast, you could go slow, you could, pace yourself and, play the game the way you want it. And I think that's the key thing to understand because at least like when I started, I thought like this is it, and you need to hit the ball and get it done. And it's like no, not really. Like just calm down, relax, and especially in the US, I feel that's the case because where I came from in India, like and I think same with you as well, right? You would go either you become a medical doctor or a engineer, then you go to a certain branch, and then you are stuck there for life. So for me, I actually didn't come from a traditional IT background at all. I started as a plant engineer. And that was my first job. So I had a first, like, I call it like choices in life. So 4 choices I'll talk about. So first was like, do you want to be a doctor or an engineer? And this is like a classic desi choice, right? You guys face the same, I'm assuming. And your parents is like, pick one of those two. And these other things, like, don't worry. But, so we had the same thing. So I chose to be an engineer. And that was more, I felt like, that I was like more attracted to building things and engineering and architecting. I could see and like, things. So that's the route I took. So I took the plant engineering route, and in that one it was like, basically, I don't know if you have seen control panels. So basically you have the big plant producing like, ammonia or nitrogen or like any of these, massive industrial things. And you have this like massive panel, like this big panel, says like a lot of dials on it. And basically what that is like you control the entire plant. And the plant is like pretty big. So if you, like the plant that I work was like air separation unit. So basically you take air and put it in like nitrogen, you create like oxygen, argon, other gases, and all of those go into like industrial production. So obviously oxygen then goes into patients, for example, right? So that's my journey. Like, so that was my first starting point. So I have like this, when people say technology, especially in the Bay Area, they think of software or hardware, or that's about it, right? For me, when we said digital transformation as a word, it was going from pneumatic controls to electronic controls, which is something people can't even like imagine, right? And technology was like, how do you run the plant? That was like technology to us, right? In those days. So then, so that was my first choice, like going from medical to engineering, like, going into this like plant automation and things like that. Then I had a choice, like, should I continue this cushy job? Because, in India, if you take some of these jobs, you're in upper middle class, you get like lot of perks and benefits. Like year 3 of my career, I would get a car, which was like unheard of at that time in India, right? You get like petrol allowance and like so many things. So I'm like, okay, should I continue doing this for like 30 years of my career, or should I do something else? I chose something else, which is come to the US. And so I applied for my visa. I got rejected twice. They said, you don't have enough, whatever, like, I come from middle class, so didn't have funding or whatever, right? I'm like, I kept on trying and then I got it. The good thing was, like, if I had gotten the visa before, there was this massive recession that had hit in the US. So by the time I would have graduated, I would be in like middle of the recession, right? And so sometimes I think Allah does like things for a reason, and we feel we have to push and push and push, but it's not the case. You can, like, there is a reason behind it, and I can see it in my career. So then I did my master's. I worked on solar cars. So at that time we retrofitted, all these Ford, GM cars from, the gas to battery. And this was like way back. Worked on solar cells. And then at some point I said, okay, I need to transition to get a job. And I think similar to yours, right? Because if you did computer science at that point in time, if someone was alive, like a little bit sane, you'll get a job. That was the case. So for me, I think it was more than that. It was more about how do I go and make an impact. And so this whole internet thing was becoming big. So I jumped into internet. I did some courses in that. And there were like 2 or 3 projects that actually really I enjoyed. So one of it is, you go into Netflix today and fast forward and rewind these movies, right? If you like, back then we had like, video cassettes, the cable, like you can just flip channels, but you could not fast forward and rewind. So that was the first project I did, which was we took a village in near Atlanta with Bell South, and we installed this whole system where you could go and fast forward and rewind the video. And we were like, oh my God, this is like so great, right? And now you see it like today and it's like, my God, like this is something I did before, right? Same thing when I look at solar cars or the battery powered cars today, I can say, oh my God, we used to do that before. And there was this one incident when we were doing this electric car where it was like, slated 70 miles it could go, similar to like the Tesla's like 300 miles. And it doesn't go 300 miles. So we took it for a spin because we were in college and like, let's go for a spin. You go like 20 miles and that thing is dead. And then we found, the indicator on that is not always accurate, right? So that's technology to me. And then at some point, I switched into more internet and like looking at online shopping and like different web applications. And then I took another choice, which was going into healthcare. And I got an offer to go into Gap because Gap was really big at that time in terms of online shopping. I had an offer to go to a startup, or I had an offer to go into Genentech, right? And so like, and my kids say it's like pretty cheesy, but I'll say that. So it was like either go into jeans, which is like the pants for Gap, or you go into jeans, which is genetics. And I felt like that was pretty intriguing to me because the difference you can make in human beings' lives is like amazing. And I went to Genentech the first time around, and I don't know if you have been to like the campus, but we have like pictures of patients all across the campus, right? And you can see like Sally, she had like breast cancer. This is what the medicine did, right? This is John, like he had, prostate cancer. This is what his story is, right? And that makes it real for us. And so I went into this, what we call the personalized medicine, which is you take a patient's journey, you say, okay, what is the diagnostics that patient needs? And how can I create a new diagnostics? What's the medicine that we need to create for that particular patient? And it could be individualized therapies. And then how do I monitor, like that whole patient journey? So that's something that I focus on today. And I say, so I take medicine, so I get dry throat. And so 2 years back, I had a life incident actually, where I went through a health issue. And I think that changed a little bit of my, how I think of the world, right? And so the way I started thinking of the world is, look, I have another 15 years maybe. I don't even know if I'm going to like leave tomorrow, right? And none of us knows, right? So how can we make an impact which is much larger than getting more pay, like building a startup, like so this is where I call it like the fourth phase of my career, the fourth choice, right? Which is two things. So one is like switching from, I call it management to leadership. And the second piece is switching from focusing on just Roche as a company to more of a healthcare and life sciences ecosystem. So this is where I took on this new role of chair of Alliance for AI in Healthcare. And I feel we are going through this next wave of technology, I call it, right? And technology is like three things. So one is the AI part. I think that will make a huge difference, and especially for all of you, if you are in STEM. The second one is not hit yet, but it will, is quantum compute. That will make a massive, massive change. And the third one is mixed reality. How do you have both virtual as well as physical reality? I think those are the three that will make a big difference. So to me, I call it like the fourth phase or the fourth choice that I'm making, which is making a much bigger impact for me in terms of the industry, really changing the industry to change patient lives, make healthcare much more efficient and equitable across like across all of the countries using some of these like technology pillars. And what I would really ask all of you, because you are in the career where I was like 25 years back, you have what I call the potential energy. So you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of wisdom, you have a lot of knowledge now. And so you can figure out like how to direct that and what's the right direction, right? And as I said, like there are no bad choices. I think we were talking in the back, right, about bioinformatics, and um, you could do that for some time. Then you can go to business. You could do that for some time. You could switch. And I think that's the beauty of the career in the US in some ways today. So that's what I would leave you with. The other thing I would leave you with is there were like few people that had like huge impact on my life. And I can count like, on my, one hand, like, 4 or 5 people who had huge impact in my career and my life, right? And I think that's the other piece, is like really identifying those people and then making them as like guidepost as you like move through your career, right? I think and the last one I would leave with is, which people forget when they talk about careers, is it's almost like a balance in your life. So if you like step back and think, who am I and where am I spending the time as an individual, right? Spending enough time on yourself, spending enough time on your family, because you will be starting families in the future, enough time on friends, and then work. Like, I think having that balance would actually really ground you, because if something doesn't go wrong, where do you fall back? You fall back to your family, like your friends, yourself, right? And I think having that base will actually really help you out. And I had the same in my life journey, and I would just advise you all to do that same thing. Thank you.
So I have the easy job because each of these four brothers have touched on every single point I was going to speak to. But listening to each of you, I think you'd agree with two things. One, when 20, 30 years back, or how many years ago, you never would have imagined where you are today, correct? Like, same with me. If you had told me I would be doing what I'm doing or sitting on the stage today telling you about what I've done, what I've achieved, as humble as little as it is, I would never have imagined, where I'd be when I started on my career. Secondly, I don't imagine myself ever stopping learning. It's the technology is always changing. There's always something new to learn. And that's my first piece of advice to all of you in school, or, early education. Never stop learning. And then, alhamdulillah, I'm in a field where, working in the life sciences, I'm a biologist. You keep digging and digging, you'll never see the end. There's learning opportunity always there. What grounds me, of course, like you, I know as well, is, my faith, Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is when you study biology, you see his wonder. Okay, side note. I mean, if you want to understand a writer, you'll read their books. You want to understand a painter, you'll go to a museum and see the paintings. You want to understand Van Gogh, you'll sit in front of a painting and analyze it and read it. By studying the creation as a biologist, I'm beginning to understand in a very small way our Creator. And every day when I come from work, when I learn something new, I always say Alhamdulillah. That's another side. I can write a book about evidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is right here. But that's another side note. So yeah, like I said, I'm a biologist. Yeah, and if people ask me, what do? I say, yeah, I study the creation. How did I end up doing what I'm doing? So I was born in London, grew up there, and I very much drifted into college. No idea what to. I went to high school. I did biology because it was my best subject, and I was interested. But I kid you not, it was the first day in my first week in college. I ended up doing a elective, it's a genetics course, molecular biology. And that first lesson, I was hooked because it was the order. I could see the order and process in the chaos of life around. DNA's code. It was just fascinating, right? And I think the passion and the energy has driven me all these years. When that runs out, that's when I retire. Oh, maybe that's the end of everything. When I recruit someone or interview someone, I'm not looking at their resume, how many years of experience, or their knowledge. First thing I look for, my colleagues look for, and previous bosses who've hired me, who today are my mentors, they told me they hired me for the reason. It was the passion, the energy, the enthusiasm. Okay, some of the jobs there was one time I leapt into a new job, crash landed, but even the people who hired me saying, maybe we don't know if you're right, but we'd love to have you on board. So I would jump into it, learn. I crashed and burned one time. Several startups I was with crashed and burned as well. But every time from each experience, even those were ones where I failed or the company failed, I learned and moved on. Always building. This is the rolling stone that gathers moss. right? It's a snowball effect. So, yeah, integrity, passion, energy. If you have that, then you have the platform on which to learn. So learning is easy. The books and texts, you will always learn from those around you. Now, yeah, so I use that energy. I went through school as long as I could. If anyone reads my LinkedIn profile, don't be scared. I'm just old. So I've accumulated all the years of experience and degrees and whatnot. You know, I could have exited at any time with, you know, with my bachelor's, my master's, PhD certifications. I could have taken any one of a number of different career pathways. And again, yeah, I think someone mentioned, don't be scared, always explore. If you have the passion, follow your passion and energy, and then you'll find your best fit, your niche, you'll find a success. I'm very lucky because I'm excited about going into work on Monday morning. I work with yes, I see looks of shock and surprise here because I love what I do. I work with great teams. And, you know, that's more valuable, you know, than the money and the benefits. That comes along, you know, as you build your career. But, and secondly, more importantly, I think I'm doing some good in the world. I work in Roche today as well, and I ended up working in the clinical field. Actually, I decided even as an undergrad, I said, you know, what's the point of learning all this science and if we can't apply it? So I've always wanted to apply myself, and I've drifted into the clinical field. So yeah, I went to grad school. I've done postdocs. I've worked in academic centers, small hospital labs where I got trained. At one point, I was, you know, an instructor, then a research assistant professor, and then I drifted into industry. And it's today, they needed me for my skill and my knowledge, but I wanted them the opportunity to learn new technologies, better apply myself on a larger scale. And yeah, and that's essentially what I'm doing today at Roche. As yeah, I'm a clinical lab director and principal investigator on multiple trials. So I work with colleagues at Genentech, many pharmaceutical companies in running clinical trials where they're trying to develop yeah, companion diagnostics, basically come up with new tests that doctors order for their physicians to understand the state of their disease and to monitor their disease when they're on drugs. So my specialty is in you know, genetics and genomics, and particularly in oncology and cancer research. So yeah, so over the years I've worked, yeah, in, like I said, it's companies of in all different sizes. But in all of them, I've worked with the same sets of colleagues with the same sets of experience in bioinformatics, project managers, product managers, marketing folks. You know, we're building new tests. I mean, at Roche, for example, just to give you an example, we were the first company that came out with the first FDA-approved COVID test, right? So imagine, what does that take? Okay, someone had to build the assay. There were research and development teams, raw, hardcore scientists that know DNA, that know virology, you know, that are great on the wet bench, right? They know how to pipette well, right? Then you have your data analytics folks, your bioinformaticians, you know, they're getting all this data, you know, out that they're analyzing. Then you have you know, the regulatory compliance folks, the quality folks, right? And they said, okay, we can develop these reagents. Okay, there's the whole manufacturing wing. You know, the whole process automated. There are engineers working on that. And then, yeah, then, okay, then they need to build kits. There's someone designing the box, the logo. I've worked with marketing folks. You know, someone has to figure out, okay, how is this going to cost? I work folks in finance, right? Okay, oh, right, we got this great operation. We got to hire people. I work with HR folks. It goes on and on. So it's a whole industry. You know, I've helped, friends, colleagues, brothers here from MCA who asked about coming, working at Roche. Years ago, they were laid off from a chip manufacturer. And I said, well, I think you can come and work, you can apply your skills here. But I said, I don't know anything about bio. I don't know anything about genetics. But he was a great programmer, a software engineer. I said, you don't think we'd use computers at Roche? Of course we do. And I brought him in. Yes, he had to, like me coming, started low level, learned, made his way up. Then, alhamdulillah, then he went on to Verily, and now he's at Google Life Science, and he's, I'm very happy that he's blossomed in this field. So it's all about applying yourself. Now, again, I could have traveled down any of these roads, but I followed my passion, energy, and I'm having fun. So I would say that each of you in your early career, think the same way.
All right. Thank you guys so much for sharing your experience. Now we'll have the Q&A part. If you want to ask any questions, you can scan the QR code, put your questions. If you see any questions you like, you can upvote them to push them to the front. So the first question we'll be starting with has the most likes. Can I intern for 2 companies at the same times without telling them?
Oh, yeah. Roche has a great internship program, and I work actually today, and I've known several interns come through my division. My first response would be no. One, because well, it might depend on the internship program and the expectations, but it's pretty much full time. During the summer, they're paid internships. It's very involved. Interns get the opportunity, and they're encouraged to produce posters, even go to meetings. Many interns go on actually to be recruited, by the company. So the honest truth is, and actually knowing those interns, they wouldn't even think about working anywhere else, even part-time, because they're so focused. Again, when you're so engaged, involved, and energized, that will be recognized, that will be seen. And you get as much out of an internship program as you put in. So my advice actually to that person was, it's not to do more than one, but put your all into that one program that you have the most passion for.
Anyone else want to
Yeah, I
chime
mean, I
in?
would agree. I would say no. And I think the other angle here is each company might have a policy around whether they allow you to do that or not. And then the second thing is that word spreads fast, right? So if you're in breach and they find out, you don't want that mark on you. So it's a small world.
Just to add, it is usually difficult to do justice to 2 jobs. So that's the reason why you should try to avoid it. The reason is there's a good chance that whoever you're working for, that's the same set of people you're going to work throughout your life. So if you are not able to do a good justice to that job, it's probably that those folks might remember you, and it might hamper you from future job opportunities.
Thank you. Next question is, what advice do you have for someone looking for a job having graduated without any internship experience while in college?
So here I don't know the specific, like which line it is. Obviously, if you have got experience, that's nice. But if you were not able to get an internship experience, then I would recommend that make sure that your degree is something solid, and based on that, if you are able to get you can directly try to get a job. If not, you should consider continuing like master's degree or something equivalent.
Just going to add one thing. There is that at least on the software engineering front, because it's true that it depends on discipline, create the experience, right? So in software, there's open source projects you can be a part of. You should be committing to them. You should be writing blogs. There's a lot of things you can do. And your intention, again, should be sincere and genuine. It shouldn't be just to build up a resume. So find a project that you're passionate about and contribute to it. And that's going to go a long ways.
Yeah, I would just double down on that. I mean, you can, some fields lend themselves very well to be able to create your own experiences, and software being one of them. It's quite easy to, even if you find open source too complicated to get into or whatever, you can create your own website, you can create your own project, and add that to your resume, right? And there's tons of different projects that you can do online, and templates and things that you can start off from like quite easily. And then I would just add that like pretty much everyone here mentioned passion as one of the core things that has driven them and has helped them in their careers. And doing those side projects or doing, working on something, even if you're not employed necessarily, that shouldn't stop you from working on something if it's something that you're passionate about. And that, employers will see that passion, and that's something that, can be, that can come across as, a point essentially, or a great thing when people are evaluating you. And so even if it's not as easy to, for example, do a project with software, maybe you're in biology or something like that, maybe you write a blog, you start up a blog on, I don't know, something that you're researching, and you can read papers online, and you start a blog post, and you publish a number of blogs after you do analysis, things like that. It doesn't even have to be directly applicable experience, but as long as it shows that you're passionate about it and you're doing something, someone may pick it up, or it's something that you can show off in an interview, and people will definitely appreciate that.
One last point. That person who asked the question, that was me when I graduated with a biology degree. Yeah, I kind of took it real too easy in college. No internship experience. No. But through a contact at college, a friendly professor, he put me in touch with a company that needed someone with really basic biology science skills. It was a very low entry job, but it was pretty decent at the time. So again, my point is there's always an opportunity if you look for it in the right places. I went for the master's option, by the way. I still didn't know what I wanted to do later on, but the master's was a good step.
Thank you. So this question is more for the co-founders or the founders. How do you know that the product you are building is the right fit for the market? And for B2B, how do you know? How do you get the initial sale for as a start?
Product market fit is a broad topic, but I think you'll find different definitions of it. At the end of the day, if you're not sure you've hit product market fit, you haven't. That's one way to look at it, right? And I think what I mean by that is that once you start seeing repeatability, so if you're solving a problem and you have a solution for it, when you start seeing the market pulling for the product, that's when you know that you've hit the product market fit. How you get there, I mean, that's a whole other process, which is you have to keep, I think my advice, and again, we're getting into entrepreneurship here, is that you really need to go narrow. You really, really need to go narrow. I think we live in the Valley, and a lot of advice is we're building platforms, a big vision. I think that's fine when you're doing a VC pitch, because they want to see $1 billion company. But practically as a founder, your job is to figure out what is that niche where we can have the most amount of impact, we can create the repeatability of sales. And to the finding your initial customers, I think Zahid had mentioned some of this, right? You have social capital, you have human capital, and you have financial capital when you start as an entrepreneur, right? So your human capital is the skills you bring. Your social capital is your network, which is very important for B2B. And your financial capital is, okay, maybe you have a buffer, full buffer of savings or something, you have to raise money. So either you have the social capital, you have a co-founder, or your company does, that you have to network. You have to reach out to people who are your target buyers. I think there is a debate whether you should give it for free, you should still charge for it. But if you work at a company, as an example, I mean, there's many different paths, right? Like when I was at PayPal, if I'm leaving PayPal and I start Euroscale, I can convince PayPal to pay for the pilot, as an example. Or I should hustle to go to other people in the industry and convince them. But it is the CEO's job in a startup, especially early stage startup, is very, very hard. It's sales. And you got to make 500 calls every single day. You've got to reach out to people. You have to keep refining your pitch. And you'll find somebody who finds value in your product. And you just got to build at it. And it's tough because there'll be a lot of days where you'll make 200 calls, 300 calls yourself, outreaches, you think you're the best message, and you'll get zero responses. But that's what separates the people who have the grit and have, I call it the hustle quotient, that's very high, versus people who will just give up and say, well, this is too hard. I don't know if you guys said.
Yeah, just to add, this is a like classic dilemma in product management also. For me, like it's like two steps. The first is find a problem that folks are willing to pay money for it. That's the first thing. Second is I would prioritize among all the problems only for which I am able to get a design partners. If I'm not getting to get design partners, I'm not going to probably prioritize it. Luckily in Bay Area, because there's Y Combinator and lots of other accelerators like that, it is possible to get startups who are willing to be your design partners. And to me, that is very, very important. To me personally, the problem or the idea was never the problem. There are lots of problems that needs to be solved, but the hardest part in a startup is always the execution. Not everyone can execute on that idea.
Yeah, last point to add, and you mentioned Y Combinator. One of their, they're like a VC fund in the over here. One of their famous sayings is "make something that people want." So very simple. I mean, it's a very simple saying, but the point is that if someone wants it, there's a good chance that there's a need for it, and hopefully, not every idea that someone wants will be something that you can charge for, but that's part of like finding product market fit, finding what is the right idea. The reality is most startups will not find product fit. They will not, be able to build something that people want and are willing to pay for. Most startups will fail, but if you can do that, then that's like the material of a successful company or startup. But it all starts at that first basic point, and that first, I would say it's quite simple: is build something that people want, figure out what the problems are, and maybe people may not express them explicitly. People may just have feelings that, hey, I'm frustrated dealing with this thing, or I'm frustrated when I'm doing that thing. And that is a problem. And if you can solve that, then that will be something that people want, essentially. So yeah, short answer, build something that people want.
Yeah, maybe, and I haven't done startups. I did startups, but I didn't go through. We had the funding, but we didn't go through it completely. I think I'm more of an observer, so I can have a more of a different perspective. I see, we live in the Bay Area, so I think most of you have seen the waves that come out in, Santa Cruz and all these places, right? The Mavericks, if you will, right? And the trick with those waves when you are surfing is you want to get above the wave. You don't want to get under the wave, right? So the trick is like understanding when the waves are going to come, get over it, and so you can, go up, right? And the way I look at things are these massive trends that happen. So, the internet comes around, the iPhone comes around with the new, mobile, the AI wave is there now. So what are those waves coming in? And what's the timing of the waves? I think that's the first thing. The second thing is in the Bay Area, like it's boom and bust. So when is the financial market there, which will lift pretty much all boats, right? I think that's the second piece that you need to think about is like, okay, so the wave is there, AI is there, etc. When do you jump in? So that's the first. The second is like, is there capital in the market? Because if there is capital in the market, like even crappy companies will get funding. If there is no capital in the market, like crappy companies don't get funding, right? I think the third thing which is important is there is this book from Peter Thiel. He's one of the big investors like for PayPal and everything, right? He wrote a book around like 0 to 1. And what that means is looking for monopolies. So it's not like another Me Too kind of company, but really looking for monopolies like what Google looked at, right? What Facebook looked at. And some of these are almost like copy of other ideas in the past, right? So Google literally copied from Alta Vista and Yahoo and all of those things, right? Facebook came along, they copied from like MySpace, you know. Microsoft came along, they copied from like somewhere else. So I think those three things I would say, like, you know, really think about if you want to be an entrepreneur. So it's like the waves, like what are those waves and when do you jump in? Second is there funding in the market? Because when you want to jump in when there is like tons of money coming into the market. And the third one is this 0 to 1 kind of concept, which is targeting those monopolies that will really make a difference. And to me, I think like that's the combination that you should also look at, other than, you know, the different capitals that you talked about.
Sorry, I just forgot to add one more thing. Before I started this company, I wished I would have like attended some course from Saba. So there's this brother from Saba out here. You can probably raise your hand. Saba does conduct a very good class on entrepreneurship. Like my son attended it. For me, it was too late. That class started after I had already created a company. But I wish I had like got a class something similar to that, and that would have definitely helped me in the job.
Okay. Thank you. Next question we have is, what are your thoughts on data science in terms of job opportunities and future impact on the world?
Can give my thoughts on it. I mean, I think it is, as brother was saying, that the wave, right? So data science, AI is all the rage right now. There's a lot of jobs out there to be had, but I think my piece of advice is going to be more around just don't follow the trend, right? At the end of the day, I believe that data science will ultimately become table stakes like programming, right? So a lot of people like how they are able to use spreadsheets, or they're able to use higher level language models, they can manipulate it. It's gonna get there. There'll be some initial jobs, but then it'll level out, right? AI will, there's been all the tooling around it. So while there's opportunity, don't get too infatuated. I think still focus on building some expertise in some domain, in some area, because it's not the generalists who are gonna be able to set themselves apart. It's people who have an expertise, like, you know, you guys have had Roche and you know clinical trials and all of that, right? You guys can hire data scientists all day long. I'm not trying to minimize the importance of data science, but at the end of the day, it could be outsourced to India, it could be outsourced to a lot of different places. So my advice, if it was me many years ago, like, and if I had the wisdom from today, I wouldn't go do a ton of data science courses. I mean, I want to do those because they're table stakes, but I would still build a career. I think it'll be hard to build a career just on general data science. That's my 2 cents. And I mean, it's a broad topic, so I can elaborate offline what I mean by that. But everything that shines is not a diamond. So buyer beware.
Yeah, I would just add here, data science frequently shows up on these lists for like top professions, top careers, top paying this, all of that. You know, it is a good path and stuff, but I think from my perspective as well, like you mentioned, AI and LLMs and all of this new technology that's coming about is going to make, I think, some aspects of data science not as valuable. Before, people in a company, if they need to have a question answered, they'll go to the data scientist and say, okay, how many users did we have in the last 30 days that used this feature? Or how many users did we did you know, XYZ? Or can you analyze this specific thing? There's technology out there even today now with AI where you can just ask the computer the question and it's going to generate the query and give you back the answer. Now, the important skills of data science is actually making sense of the answer, making sure, you know, you're making sense of the data and all of that sort of thing. And I think AI is getting to the point where it's becoming easier and easier to actually extract that in natural language. Whereas in the past, it was a data scientist that would be doing those things. So, I mean, from that perspective, I'm not as enthusiastic about the future for data scientists necessarily. That doesn't mean it's going away completely, but you know, it's probably not going to be the biggest field in the future. And then the other thing to look at is at every company, for every 10 software engineers, you may have one data scientist, or for every 20 software engineers, you may have one data scientist. And so, from a number of jobs and careers perspective, you're already talking about a much smaller pool of, you know, potential job openings. And with AI and some of these other trends, it's possible that that dwindles even further. So I mean, it may be good right now to get into, but long term, I'm not as optimistic about the prospects of it.
Yeah, I would like to add one more point. I mean, it was like Jones Bhai already clearly made the point that with the data scientist, you need to have a domain knowledge. For example, if you are in the credit world, you need to have very good knowledge of credit risk. Then only you can be a data scientist in the credit risk industry. So domain knowledge is very important. But the other trend that I've seen is data science is still relatively easy. Software engineering is still very hard. So what is happening is like when I was working in PayPal, for example, all the data scientists where they were all PhDs. They used to have only PhDs. Now, when I went to companies like Uber, there the trend that I'm seeing is folks who are in data scientists, they don't want to be in that line. They all wanted to change the title to ML engineer. What that means is besides data scientist or data science, you're also expected to know a good bit of depth of knowledge in software engineering also. So essentially domain knowledge plus software engineering knowledge also.
Maybe I'll give a different answer actually. I think AI in particular, not data science, and AI as a technology, it will massively change how we look at the world today. And I go back to the internet days, and you look at the internet came out, then we had, the online shopping came out with things like Amazon and Petstop and this like whole bunch of things. The online media came up with, Netflix and everything like that, Disney and so forth. The mobile came out because of that, the cloud came out because of that, and now AI is kind of because of that, right? And so the origins of that is internet, and I feel AI is something very, very similar as a technology that will transform the world, right? Doesn't mean that it's going to go straight line. I think it might, dip, go up, but end of the day, it'll be like that. And the reason I say that is, um, some people, I think, ERP as an example, right? So ERP was something where we took the processes in a company. So you could take a purchase order, and instead of having it all manual, it was all in the system, right? So basically, all it was is, you have a form, like someone fills out, the name, etc. It goes into a database and workflow, and that's a code system. So we took all the processes in the companies and put them in, like, I call a jail, because end of the day, it's like table and columns, right? That's what a system is. Um, the processes that were more manual, they call it quote unquote, which is more on paper. So if you write a document which is on paper, it cannot be converted to like tables, and they state the way it is. And what AI is doing now is like transforming those processes. So I'll give a very practical example. If you go to the doctor's office, right? The doctor takes notes, and it's like all, Word document basically. And there are some fields, but most of it is Word. So now if you want to figure out, okay, did this patient really benefit from the medicine I gave? You could not today. And we have Flatiron as a company. They actually have the whole business of someone really looking at the notes, putting it in tables and columns and fields. And that's a manual process. Like, 80% of the Flatiron revenue goes in terms of someone really manually, like, doing that, right? So that whole piece can be automated now, which is amazing, mind-boggling. Think about it. So you could literally look at the patient journey end to end without much manual intervention and much, much faster than before, right? So now tell me, like, will it have an impact or not? Yes, right? The thing is, like, you want to be in data science? Probably not, because that's the job that will go away. That's the job that will become more table stakes, right? So I think what you want to look at technology is see where it's going and see like what type of roles will evolve that will take advantage of the technology. And it may not be the data science, even the developer job, I feel will go away a lot, because you could actually literally do legacy to new technology conversion with LLMs, which is mind boggling, right? So a lot of the jobs that we see today might not be there. So what you're going to look at is what are the jobs and opportunities to be created in the future. And it's about, I think, like two things. One is the domain knowledge, as you said. So really understanding either deep biology or deep bioinformatics or medical technologies, or it could be finance. And the second one in data science that will not go away is the math. Because if you look at core data science, it's all about algorithms, all about math. And math has been there for like, thousands of years now, right? Or hundreds of years at least. So those things are not going to go away. So if you focus on like core math skills and core domain skills and just communication application of those things, I feel that will be a place that you can then survive for a long time.
I think just quickly in terms of opportunities, certainly domains we've talked about, right? Cybersecurity, healthcare. I mean, these are going to be very, very important domains. In AI itself, there is going to be a need for a lot of rethinking of certain aspects. Like, I think AI security will be big, which means that you really, really need to understand how these models work. You have to have depth of knowledge, because imagine situations where somebody can hack into your AI model and make it do something different. AI governance is going to be big. AI compliance is going to be big. So I think that will require deeper expertise and knowledge that you can just go deep in that aspect of it. So just wanted to offer that as well.
Okay, thank you. A few more questions. What are some programs / things you recommend doing in high school if someone is planning to pursue a career in CS or bioscience?
So yes, certainly getting involved in a STEM program, for example, or I know I've mentored high school students, so I know they've their competitions, to put together like a science project, present them at a science fair. That gives great exposure, makes connections, gives an opportunity to find folks working in your field of interest. I would start there. When I was in high school, I'm thinking back, yeah, we had similar like inter-school competitions. Yeah, there were science fairs. I was always eager, yeah, just, as a change, again, apply myself, get out of the classroom. That was always fun. And yeah, opens avenues for exploration, making connections. So, and it's as simple as that. They're free. You can ask your teachers. I know in your schools there'll be similar programs.
The other thing I would advise is like look at the classes that you can see on the internet. For example, I believe there is a class called as CS50. It's by Stanford or Harvard. That one is a good one. The other thing you can do is try to do the AP classes directly in your high school. But that being said, those AP classes are pretty difficult. Like I looked at one of them, it was like Java with data structures. So there's no way you can do that AP class unless you are taking a tuition for both Java as well as data structure outside. Maybe through maybe some Coursera courses will help you, but you definitely have to take help for doing those AP classes outside. So that's the best I can tell at this point. If you're able to do like your own projects on the side, like there are lots of places where we can help in doing equivalent of internship. Should definitely try that. But before you can even do that, you need to know the programming language. Then only you can go ahead and take all those jobs.
I would say maybe a different, maybe slightly complementary to this. I would do more of, like if I had to do it again, and I was lucky in my school that we had some of these programs, I would do more of rhetoric. So language, and how do you communicate with people? And because it's about, one is about working with the computers and technology, one is like working with the people and changing minds. And I think that's the critical bit. That's what like rhetoric will give you. And the second is logic. Because what we'll see is with the new social media and especially with the, the large language models, I think we'll see manipulation on the social media. And it's happening now where the algorithms can actually really tailor to your personality and really tune you into a different direction. And so having that logic and grounding will help you out. And same thing with rhetoric, because if you have rhetoric and language, that will, you can then communicate and change the world. And I think that's what you want to think about is not just the computers, but how do you like, bring change to this whole, the world and make it in the right direction, the way it should go. Right?
one thing I was going to offer was slightly different perspective, which is more around less about which courses you're taking. Even in high school, having practical hands-on experience is going to go a long ways. So if you can go score an internship, I know it's not easy, even college grads are having a hard time, go score an internship, go again, work on open source, contribute to that, make sure you're going to the right conferences. A lot of high schoolers were probably not going to do that. Start your own company in parallel. Yeah, I was mentioning that it's back to the hustle, right? So there are courses you can take. At least I can relate back to the computer science program that I was going through. Even in the school, I actually went for some of the harder courses where the A was not as easy, but it was going to be very practical down the road. And courses, I remember still to this day, we had an operating system course. It was an advanced level course, and there was an alternate professor who didn't give you a project and it was an easy A versus the professor we had. Literally 90% of my time that semester was on that course. I was taking a full load. And what I learned about teamwork, what I learned about programming, what I learned about hardcore computer science through that was pretty phenomenal. So one thing is like have that aptitude of learning, not about what looks good on resume. I'll go back to that, right? It's easy to have that mindset. And the second thing is as a high schooler, if you can get that practical experience, it will set you apart tremendously because it shows so much motivation and hustle at a much younger age compared to down the road.
All right, for last question for all of you, if you could go back and redo anything in your career with the knowledge you have now, what would you do differently?
It's funny because you read my mind, and I've already thought of the answer. The answer is nothing. Because, yeah, sometimes I think just listening to your advice, maybe, oh, I wish I had that advice when I was younger. I would have done things differently. Should I have done this and that? But then I said to myself, if I hadn't done this and that and followed the path I had taken, I wouldn't be here today. And Alhamdulillah, I'm happy, I'm content. Like I said, I've got a great job. So follow your path. I followed mine. And Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful for that experience I had the opportunity for.
Yeah, I'll say the same actually. It's as I said, like life is almost like the cricket game, and you bat, and so you just hit the balls you can hit, and be happy with where you are.
All right, guys, thank you guys for coming. Maghrib is starting, so we'll end it here today. Tomorrow will be Social Science and Law Day, and Thursday will be Business and Finance. Please join us here in the Khadija Banquet Hall, same time. Jazakallah.